Ladies and gentlemen, we are back again. Good evening and thank you for joining us on this weekend's edition of Viewpoint on DBS television. Every day at 7 p.m. we make sure that we are there to inform you, educate you on certain aspects concerning Cameroon, Africa, and the entire world. Today, we will be going out of the Cameroon context or Africa as a whole to discuss issues that matters to us as blacks. But then, to discuss about this, we are having a Pan-Africanist with us here in the studio. We are talking of Derek Galim, and we are having Mange Venashus to accompany us in this discussion. That said, good evening to you, sir, and thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Vanessa, for accepting me on this podium today.
Mange Venashus, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, Vanessa. Good evening to our viewers at home.
Let us set the pace for the debate, starting with the first part of the show, that is the yes or no and answer questions. In the first part of the show, let us take our first question. In your opinion, is the recent quest for the United States of Africa by Pan-Africanists possible? And I begin with you, Derek.
I say it is possible.
It is possible. That is a yes. Mange Venashus.
If there was a possibility, I would have taken the yes and no. I would take no.
You would take no?
Yes.
Question 2. Has Africa the potential for self-development? Mange Venashus?
Yes.
Yes. And to you, sir?
Yes.
Yes. And our last question, will you consider the recent murder of George Floyd a mere coincidence or a calculated attack on black Americans? I begin with you, Derek.
It is a calculated attack on black Americans.
Mange Venashus?
No.
No, it is not. Let us set the pace for the debate. Stay tuned. And in our first question, let us take it all of as a reminder. In your opinion, is the recent quest for the United States of Africa by Pan-Africanists possible or a far-fetched dream? And Derek, you are saying that it is possible. So what are those possibilities?
It is a possibility, and I'll begin from going to the question of how Africa was divided and disunited. And at times, you have to use the weapon of your enemy or your opponent in order to redress situations. It took 13 countries, the Western world or powers as we may call them, just a single conference. It took them unity to disunite Africa. It took them just a single conference at Berlin, where Africa was left out. She was not invited. It is true. You don't invite a cake to the table at the moment of cutting it, it will not agree with you. And Africa was left out, and the major decision of the conference was how to divide Africa among themselves in order to easily occupy and exploit Africa. And Africa, being absent, could not say anything to their own help. They could not defend themselves, and therefore Africa was disunited and occupied. Various colonizers had made attempts individually to break into Africa and take hold of it, and so many were unsuccessful. And therefore the only way they could do it was to come as a united team. And united, they succeeded. They gathered in Berlin and took a decision to partition Africa among themselves. They came with a bigger force of a unity of 13 countries, and they succeeded to divide Africa. It is possible for Africa to reunite and free themselves from this bondage. How do they need to do it? Just simply come to a conference like the European powers, the Western powers did in order to divide her, and in that conference they reunite themselves and stand up tall and strong against the Western world. I think that they will stand as partners and not just divided individuals the division in which it's impossible for them to even, stand in any equality with the Western powers. But I am convinced that if Africans were to come together in a united force, congregate themselves and come as a power, they will stand as equals with the Western countries.
How possible is that? Given their political differences, their ideological differences, given that some of them are still tied to their colonial past, how would that be possible?
It is true there are challenges. I will not refute the fact that we face lots of challenges. But the will is there. Once voices are coming up stronger and stronger every day in favor of an opinion, the world gets to know about it. We need a lot of sensitization right to the roots for this to happen. And I think now that the debate is already on the table, it's the first stage. Once we debate about it, more conferences will start holding up, and this will bring us to the point. Professor Patrice Lumumba, the Tanzanian, is already doing a very excellent job. And he organizes conferences day in, day out, sensitizing Africans. We need to come together. We need to come together. Julius Malema of South Africa, he's doing a perfect job. He will not take any of the divisive tendencies that are brought in by the Western powers. And I believe from all these conferences that are already being organized, we are moving to the stage where we'll come together in a conference. And once we come together in the conference, we are going to push aside all the divisive tendencies. We know each of the Western power is trying their best to be sure that we remain in the divided state, right? And the French countries, it's a serious stumbling block that we are facing, because it is the #1 country that keeps Africans completely disintegrated. So I believe if we come together and hold our hands together, we used to say two heads are better than one, or two hands can tie a bundle. The bundle here is the unity we are longing for.
Actually bringing out the possibility that Africans can create a United States of Africa through these pan-African ideas that are being promulgated. Mangevena Shoes, you rather think that it cannot happen, it is not possible, it is a far-fetched dream. How come?
Vanessa, we are living in an era where individualism, greed, selfishness has been cultivated in the mindset of many Africans. That is why at the beginning of this program I said if there was a possibility I would have sat on the fence. But if you look at it, if you look at the way Africa has been structured, Mr. Ngalim said it took 13 countries or so to divide Africa, and that division still holds today because they have succeeded in permeating every sector of every African country to make sure that that policy which they say divide and rule policy, that it is effectively implemented in Africa. Ask African countries, I don't know if they exist, if there is any African country that can boldly stand, conduct their political, economic, financial affairs of their country without foreign intervention. We are talking about the quest for United States of Africa. There is something like African Union. Vanessa, they tell us that three-quarters of the budget of African Union comes from European Union. How can a foreign organization sponsor the running of another foreign organization and that foreign organization remains independent? Africa have succeeded. When they talk of the CEMAC zone having a meeting, you see white in that meeting. When they talk of the West African bloc having a meeting, you see white. I mean, I just cited the two because when I take the northern part of Africa, there are people from Morocco, Tunisia, the Arab country. You would think that they are white. But I mean in Central Africa, West Africa, where all of them are blacks. What has the white got to do in the affairs of Central Africa that they take part, even when they are head of state? When I talk of head of state, the possibility of having a United States of Africa is there. But the kind of head of states that we have, they have been brainwashed in such a way. How many African presidents are treated in Africa? Because they believe that salvation is out of the country, forgetting that they have the possibility to make that salvation happen in their country. So they have been brainwashed in such a way that when you talk of uniting Africa, they are afraid because their integrity is not assured. If Africa is united today, they will not be able to, the Western world will not be able to telecontrol the affairs in their country. Remember, most of them are in power because of Western countries. What killed Gaddafi?
Gaddafi.
It was because he has been a staunch disciple of United States of Africa, and France, because they have never wanted that to happen, looked for ways, painted him black, killed him. What happened in Ivory Coast? France came in, captured Gaddafi, Gbagbo, and today he is undergoing persecution. Is it that Western countries, presidents, we don't have things that the International Court of Justice can also take them? Trump sits in America, decides and kills somebody in Iraq because he is a threat to the security of America. Nothing happens. We don't hear the International Court of Justice because that's not abuse of human rights. Let an African president does that, you will hear him a crime against humanity. So what is happening is African presidents, they cannot give way. If we could succeed in flushing out the current leaders that we have in Africa, the dream of a United States of Africa could be possible. But in as much as we have the kind of leaders that we have, who don't think, who can sacrifice a whole generation, 2, 3 generations because of their egoism to remain in power, because they think that France must play a role in the running of their country. That is where we are. And that's why I say that.
Does that explain the effect we still face now as a result of neo-colonialism?
Of course, that is neo-colonialism in its peak, when they pretend that African countries are free, yet they are still under the influence of their colonial masters. That is why today France has a say in Cameroon, France has a say in Central Africa, France has a say in Gabon, France has a say in all their French ex-territories. What's the meaning of independence? If we are independent, it means I decide what I do. I am independent from my parents. My father can't come and tell me, this is how you run a family, you should have 3 children, you should have 5. No, I am independent of him. Cameroon should be independent of France. Central Africa, Chad, all these French territories, carry out your affairs without French influence. If we succeed to reach that stage, we can talk of a United States of Africa. But because they know that if we have a United States of Africa, there are some other, we are not saying all African leaders are that way. There are some other African leaders who have this Pan-Africanist tendencies. And France knows that if they merge Africa into a United States, these Pan-Africanists will influence their stooges, and then they will not have their way through. Remember, France lives on Africa. Africa is like it's a host, and France is just like a parasite that is living on their host, which is Africa. And if you pluck off the parasite from the host, the parasite dies. So that is what is happening in Africa. So the possibility of having a United African States is there, but the kind of leaders that we have make it completely null and void.
Null and void. Thank you very much for your viewpoint, Mange Venasius. And while we are debating on the fact that Africa should be a United States on its own, we are asking the question whether Africa has the potential for self-development, and there you think that Africa has the potential. We know that almost all of the resources, the raw materials being used abroad to transform finished products are from Africa. So if you say that we have the self-potential, do we have the necessary industrialized machines to be self-independent?
Okay, I hold it that Africa has the potential, what it takes to develop itself, despite the challenges that we face. But the capital question is, has Africa got the potentials? The potentials. And Africa has the potentials. We look at both the terranean and the subterranean resources. that Africa has. Africa is the bedrock of the world as far as resource deposits are concerned. And that is why the scramble for Africa. What have we got? In terms of terrain, you see, the agric-rich soils, or the agricultural rich soils, we know already that agriculture is the bedrock of African development. The African economy hangs on agriculture. And we have wonderfully rich soils, volcanic soils everywhere. It's true, volcanism is not a common phenomenon in all countries in Africa, but we know Africa is blessed, although we may call it a natural disaster, but it is also a blessing because it enriches our soils and it makes it better for our agriculture. So as far as agriculture is concerned, we have the potential, we have what it takes. And look at the touristic potential. Africa is full of natural marvels. Tourism alone is a very great developmental potential that we have in our hand. I give to you the economy of Dubai, right? If Dubai is running down now, it's because this COVID stuff has completely killed the tourism industry. Dubai has not got all the petroleum deposits and other resources that we have, but the economy of Dubai, 75% of it is built on tourism. And Africa is far more wonderful as far as touristic sites are concerned than Dubai. And therefore, if Africa were to exploit the tourism department or the touristic potentials that we have, believe me, the development rate in Africa is going to climb, if at least by 13%, if I were to say that. And look at Africa's youthful population. Is a great resource that we have at hand, and all we need is the right direction to take, the directives that we need, the right education. As far as the potential, the human labor that is there, we have the force. Look at the subterranean resources. Gold, we have it. Diamonds, we have it. Uranium, we have. Forest resources, petroleum deposits, we have all it takes. I know these, they cannot go without the challenges. When we look at the relationship we have with the Western world as far as our ability to exploit these resources for our own development is concerned, you will cry out loud. Normally, the power of a currency is determined by the gold reserve or the resource reserves that are available for a particular country or a particular continent. You bear with me that as far as gold reserves are concerned, Africa is a marvel to the world. But why is it that Africa has a gold reserve but our currency is not stronger as it's supposed to be? You'll discover that $1 exchanges for about 550 or 650 of the franc CFA, whereas we are the ones who have the gold reserves. That is a counter developmental, situation that we are facing, despite the fact that we have got the potential.
So what do we do now to make use of these potentials?
Now I come in with the first thing I would recommend is the proper curriculum development. Look at it. Africa has been working on a kind of curriculum for education that is designed by the very perpetrator of Africa's underdevelopment. They've trained their own children to be creators of jobs. But our own education is geared towards training us to be job seekers. Where do we end? The position of slaves. Their children create the jobs. We slave under their factories. We need an iron and steel industry in order to develop ourselves properly. And believe me, the Western world is not foolish in refusing to see to it that Africa has an iron and steel industry. But we need to sit up. That's what I was saying. We need to sit up in order to take our future into our hands, take the development of Africa into our hands. India did not have the natural resources that Africa has, But India invested into the education sector, the IT world, and Indians have become CEOs of Google and whatsoever you can imagine. Therefore, Africa needs just to sit up, develop a proper curriculum, and train the skills, train to acquire the skills that are necessary to exploit these potentials that they have got for the development of the African continent.
All right, Mange Venatius, you are supporting the fact that we have the potentials. He just highlighted the diverse mineral resources that we have, but then how do we use it to the development of the African continent, given that we do not have the necessary industrial equipment to transform it into finished product?
Vanessa, this industrial equipment that you are talking of is not as if they are, you know, they are not like mountains that we came and met them there. Like say they just sprouted up in Western countries and God did not give them to us. People built them. And I remember I read something from a post. Somebody was saying that while children in India, Japan, China, Russia are studying arithmetical, geometric formulas, our African students are busy praying, attending novenas and crusades in Africa. What is happening here is they have, they have structured our mind frame to believe that we are incapable of doing this or that. I was listening to something last weekend on the radio. They were talking of a Cameroonian who happened to have collaborated with the US, sending one of their space ship of recent. She is a Cameroonian. That Cameroonian, she already has a US nationality. There is something they called brain drain in Africa. Under the disguises as the American lottery green card. There is when you are filling the form, there is one of the space they want to find out what you can do. From that form, they can see that this guy has a very high IQ or and you send in your document as well. Immediately you have something that they think that they can explore. You become an American citizen. I take for example, we had an athlete in Cameroon who went for an Olympic competition under the Cameroon banner, and she ended up being a French citizen. I'm talking of François Mbango. Why did France have to take her? Because they knew that in the next Olympic game, the gold medal that she would win would be French gold medal. Yannick Noah. He is a Cameroonian. He is a tennis player. He is a musician. When Yannick Noah was a musician, French used to refer to him as a Cameroonian. When he came out into the spotlight and became a celebrity, he was a French, Yannick Noah. So what I want to say here is, we have the potential for self-development, but they have made it in such a way that we cannot believe in our own potentials. We cannot invest our own potentials to see what it can give. Vanessa, we have polytechnic schools in Cameroon. But when we want to build a road in Cameroon, we need to bring technicians. We need to give it to a Chinese company. Of what use do we have these polytechnics? Of what use are we training our own engineers when we cannot use them? What are their purpose? It is because
we are training them for foreigners to have them.
Correct. We don't believe that we can use them. We don't believe that they can deliver. And when these Chinese companies came or come, when they come here, what do? They keep our own technicians afar and they do the work. The real work, you don't see it. But when it comes to just supplying mortar and stones, that's when they bring our own technicians. So the thing is, we need to believe in ourselves. We have the self-potential. We have the potentials for self-development. Everything. Ngani was citing the various sectors that we have. In all these developed countries, how many blacks are there? Why is it that these blacks, they were talking of Black Lives Matter, Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter because the white man knows that take away the black man, they will do nothing. We have the physical strength when it comes. We have the intellectual strength. But the structure, Vanessa, I remember when we were graduating from class 6, from class 7, those who passed in list A, were those who were going to government schools. These are grammar schools, government schools. Then those who were in List B, or those who didn't even write the common entrance at all, they went to SAR, SM, to technical schools. Because we believe that those who were intelligent were those who were going to government schools, and government schools were grammar schools. You graduate with a grade in history, geography. What can you offer the society? But somebody does 2 years, 3 years in a technical school, he is able to make doors, he's able to make shutters, he's able to make frames, he roofs a house, he builds a house. That is how development...
He constructs vehicles.
That is how development should begin. But then they structure our minds to think that you should be a doctor in history. And so what? What do you doctor in history? Which type of history do you even say? You will call a white man to come and give you the history of your country, because they know what what is at stake. So what I want to say here is they have structured Africans to believe that we cannot make it without the white man, and that is why we just have to depend. We produce wood and we import wood. How do we produce wood? They take from here, send it to France. It is processed in France and then come to Cameroon. How do we produce crude oil here in Limbe, and they send it to France? It comes back, and you know the name they give to it? Super. And then the fuel that comes from other neighboring countries, they call it fingi, because that one is poor quality. And the question I ask is, the cars that run in that country, are they not the same cars that we have here? Are they not functioning? Let us believe in ourselves, in what we have. We have the potential for self-development.
For self-development. All right, we have about 3 extra minutes, hopefully with the collaboration of our producer tonight, to take the last question. Will you consider the recent murder of George Floyd a mere coincidence or a calculated attack on black Americans? And Derek, you think that it is a calculated attack? In 1 minute, maybe you could just give us a resume why you think it is calculated.
Okay, it's a calculated attack because what the Americans tell us is not what really is. I distinguish between appearance, what they tell us, and the reality, the absolute truth that we do know. And you see, Theodore Bilbo was a senator for Mississippi in the United States in 1947. And he called for the elimination of black Americans from the polls, right? And he said the reason, or the only way to keep the blacks out of the polls, that's any proper decision taken in the United States, was that elections should be held the night before the given date, so that blacks are completely kept out. And this view was strengthened by Strom Thurmond, who ran for presidency in 1948 in the United States for the State Rights Democratic Party. And his slogan was, "We stand for the segregation of the races." And what does he mean by "we stand for the segregation of the races"? The fact that his banner, which he used for his campaign, was a Confederate flag. He chose the Confederate flag because it supported his ideal. And his ideal was that the Negro is not equal to the white man. That was discrimination at the highest order. And since this in itself, the ideologies were unable to bring to reality what they really wanted, they turned to direct elimination. And if you look at only the statistics for New Orleans and New York City in the 1900s, you discover in 1901, 105 blacks were lynched for those states alone. In 1902, we had 85 blacks lynched. 1903, 84. 1905, 57. 1906, 62. 1908, 89. 1910, 67. And when you look at Tulsa, Tulsa is in Oklahoma, is a black wall street. That was one of the most developed economies in any state in the United States, and it belonged entirely to the blacks. And what happened? They could not stand to see that happen in the United States, which is referred to as the land of the white man. So, they completely burnt down.
Linking it to the case of George Floyd, how is it not a mere coincidence, or how is it calculated?
It's calculated because it has always been planned. They burned down the Tulsa state, right? These are huge numbers of blacks that have always been killed. And in 1968, Martin Luther received a bullet on the neck. Why? Because he dared resurrect the question of equality. He was shot dead. So George Floyd's case is not different. He has just been shot as the other blacks have been shot down history. Therefore, it is calculated. It was not just a coincidence. They just continued in the scorched earth policy of killing, bringing down the black population. If they have failed to eliminate them from the polls from any decision taking, since they do not matter, they go down to direct elimination through the bullet.
All right. Thank you for your viewpoint. Mange Vinashus, in 1 minute.
Yes, Vanessa, I was of the opinion that it was not a calculated, plot, because, like he said, it has been something that has been going on not only in America but in other African countries. Yes, so in other European countries. So I think that it is not simply because they killed George Floyd. It just happened that at the times that people had the awareness that no, we need to be equal. So that's happened.
All right. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for your point of view in today's edition. And to you, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your perseverance in watching us tonight. We'll be back again on Monday, God willing. Stay tuned for programs continue on DBS Television. Bye-bye.